Today's dedication is for Zahn, who gave me a very generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon. The Ancient One versus Glissa. We have a decent opening hand there. I like the Hedron Crab into a fetch land, so yeah, we've got our colours as well. We'll keep this. Our opponent just starts off with a swamp. We get down the Hedron Crab on turn 1, ready to make landfall into. Also drew into a Mishra's Bauble, so we will play that. Able to look at the top card of our opponent's library when we crack it, and we will draw a card as well. Seeing an Ornithopter on top of our opponent's library, so may well play that this turn. And we draw into another land from the Bauble. Going for a different mana dork in the Sylvan Caryatid. And we draw a Spellskite to protect our commander, that's good, so yeah, let's go for the Prismatic Vista here. We can crack that straight away in order to make even more landfall. This is self-mill of 3 every time we make a land. And Hedron Crab with fetches is about as good a start as you can hope for in this deck. We've already got 8 cards in our graveyard, so play out the Ancient One, ready to swing in with it next turn. Noteworthy that we did mill a Memory Deluge, which does have flashbacks, so we can play that from the bin if we want to. Obviously it doesn't count towards our permanents in the bin, but we're a ways away from that yet. Okay, the Glissa comes down, continuing to hold the Ornithopter in hand. So on our turn, make landfall again, and again target ourselves with the mill. And this does mean that we're going to be able to swing in here, so let's go for the enchantment, Aqueous Form, onto our commander. Throw out the Spellskite as well, like I said, to protect our commander against spot removal. And scrying with the Aqueous Form upon attack allows us into a Vendilion Click, isn't the worst. So yeah, we'll keep it. Get to look at our opponent's hand with that. Now seeing the Ornithopter into play. And Glissa swings in against a couple of small creatures, so we'll just let this through. And yeah, they get to go for the Aqueous Form this way, but at least they're not drawing additional cards. And we get to screw up their mana this way as well. If they want to block our commander, they'll have to go down a mana, because they seem to be missing land drops. Alright, so draw into the Vendilion Click, as you would expect. Drop another land and self-mill for 3. Alright, and that's a good one. Mesmeric Orb, our opponent will be glad to see the back of. So we'll go through to combat. No longer have unblockable on our commander, but we can swing in here for 8 and encourage him to block. Okay. Decides to take it and goes up to 16, so if we manage to get unblockable again, then he's going to be done for. Glissa going into the red zone again, and again we will allow it through. So this time managing to draw a card and lose a life. We'll be able to look at additional cards with the Vendilion Click this way. Alright, and our opponent's still missing lands seemingly, but casts a Damnation with the 2 mana dorks, so willing to go down to 2 lands. Yeah, I think we just go for the counter there by discarding the Mirror Shell Crab. They can't afford the 3. And that's obviously a counter spell that's attached to a permanent, so it counts towards our commander. Yeah, and that's enough. Our opponent is going to take commander damage next turn thanks to having to tap down the creatures. Missed out on lands there, so not a particularly enthralling game. We will try another one. Playing against Krenko this time, and that's a heavier hand, but hopefully we can draw into some with the Careful Study. Careful Study will let us discard the Jingataxias as well, so we'll play this. And we are on the play, so go for the Careful Study on turn 1, draw 2, discard 2. Alright, there's an Urza's Bauble, which is another permanent we can get in the bin. So definitely discard Jingataxias, and could go for the Vidalian Hexcatcher, but it's better early in the game. Yeah, let's go for Likeness Looter, that's better later in the game, although the looting wouldn't be the worst. Play out the Urza's Bauble, we can look at an opponent's card at random. And he shows us an Icon of Ancestry. Then during his upkeep we get to draw. Takes us into Malevolent Hermit. Alright, so not doing too well on loading up the graveyard yet. So we've got some time to get the Ancient One into play. Let's play the Hermit Druid, because it's a better counterspell than the Vidalian Hexcatcher. Mog War Marshal for the Goblins player. Noteworthy there is a Castle Embereth as well. And it's another land for us, so just drop a basic. Let's get our commander into play so that we can take the Summoning Sickness away. And we can hold up the counterspell on the Hermit. Okay, Ashnod's Altar. Yeah, I should probably counter that, but I think I want to hold on to counters that directly affect the board over here. Yeah, argument to be made for countering that, but we'll let it down. Makes the game more fun, if nothing else. Alright, a Murderous Rider this time. I forgot that Murderous Rider actually shuffles into your graveyard once it dies, so probably not the best thing to have in the deck actually, but we have it as some spot removal anyway. Shock down the Watery Grave and play the Ether Spell Bomb, ready to bounce the Krenko. And we're just holding up the Swift End at this point, ready to maybe blow up Krenko with that as well. So down comes the Mob Boss. And at the end of the turn we see no haste from our opponent thankfully, so Swift End going on the Krenko forced him to recast. And that's another counter spell in the form of an Offer You Can't Refuse. So I think we're fine to just get down the Murderous Rider here as a means of chump blocking. And that way we'll be able to pay the mana into the Ether Spellbomb to bounce the Krenko when they no doubt play that again next turn. And Urza's Incubator now, going to make things cost even less. I don't like the idea of that with Krenko gaining command attacks. I want him to keep that command attack, so counter the Urza's Incubator. They can afford to pay for it, but that will swallow up mana that they're not putting into getting down the Krenko or anything else. So they do decide to pay it, sacrificing a goblin in the process, and down comes the Incubator. That does put one more permanent in our bin though. Alright, and Red Elemental Blast. As soon as we lose the counter magic, our opponent goes after our commander, which is why I was holding it up all this time. So the Ancient One back into the command zone. And we draw a Gaia Reach Sanitarium where everyone will loot for 2 and a tap. So just get down our commander again and continue to hold up the Spell Bomb. Might as well gain a bit of life from the Murderous Rider as well, a 2/3 lifelink. So there we see our friend Krenko again. Our opponent really missing haste. Dark Dweller Oracle as well is a means of some card advantage. I'll have to put mana into that though. Alright, so at the end of the turn we'll crack the Spell Bomb, get rid of the Krenko. Not doing the best job of filling up our graveyard very quickly with permanents here. Draw into an island. Rather be seeing fetches. So swing in with the Murderous Rider again. Still can't swing in with the Ancient One just yet. Been a lot slower than in the last game. It shows how good the Hedron Crab is. The red player goes for Sol Ring. And straight into a Krenko with that. And then playing that revealed Icon of Ancestry. So get down the Merfolk here. We can counter something unless they can afford to pay 1, which they can at the moment. Maybe should have got that down earlier. But let's try and encourage them to put some of their red mana into the Hexcatcher. And they do, so definitely want the Icon of Ancestry coming into play. But we did swallow up some of their red mana there, so maybe kept them off a Goblin. And now we've got some mana left over for Gaia Reach Sanitarium, so draw and discard. And there's a Wonder, so no wonder what we're going to discard here. While we control an island, that will give our creatures flying. And got us a step closer to a new one, that is Souls of the Lost. And that is a big 7/8 for 2 mana at the moment. So I think that's a no-brainer to get that into play. And we do have to sacrifice a permanent, but we can just get rid of a land here. I think that will help add to the permanent count on our commander. Which does mean that we can finally start swinging in now, so turn 8 and we're only just starting to attack with our commander. Very, very slow, but we've held Krenko at bay as well. So now Krenko activating for the first time. Makes a couple of Goblin tokens. Discarded Legion Loyalist to the Gaia Reach Sanitarium loot, by the way. And there's an Eldrazi Monument, definitely going to counter that. We don't want to see flying or indestructible from our opponent's stuff. Want to be able to fly straight over with this commander damage on our commander. 2 more hits and our opponent will go down. Activating the Icon of Ancestry to get some card advantage. And decides to choose and cast a Goblin Matron. And tutoring to the top with that, a Goblin Recruiter. Search your library for any number of goblins and put them on top. So we'll have our opponent draw into that now with the Gaia Reach Sanitarium. We just draw into a land, so discard the land. Our opponent got rid of a Ruby Medallion, so 1 mystery card in hand. Alright, that's a great draw, Drown in the Lock, so yeah, probably, as opposed to blowing up Krenko, we're probably going for countering the Goblin Recruiter. Because they're probably trying to refill their hand with that. Our creatures now have flying, so we'll go in with the two big ones. That is a big 9/10, Souls of the Lost. And our commander still an 8/8. So knocking them down to 9 and 16 commander, so even if we lose our commander here, we're looking like we've got it. There's that Goblin Recruiter, so definitely go for the counter from the Drowned in the Loch. And the last card in our opponent's hand is Ib Halfheart. So our opponent's going to have to be careful with attacks here. We can force them to sacrifice things with that if we block. Krenko activating for a second time. And that makes a heap of tokens, so now deciding to sacrifice them in order to gain card advantage from the Oracle. Shows us a Valor Cup. Don't have enough mountains in play for that to be relevant anyway. Then a Moria Marauder. Yes, ever since this release I haven't played a Goblin deck, but that's a really good one to include. So playing that out straight away, and going for the card advantage this way instead. Only swinging in with 3 of his Goblins. So we'll just block the Broodmother, force them to sacrifice it. We'll take a hit to the tokens. And Ib Halfheart will trigger there, of course. So going to sacrifice the Mother and deal 4 damage to the Murderous Rider, meaning that we don't get a chance to gain any life from the lifelink. And there we see the Murderous Rider trigger. It goes on the bottom of our library when it hits the bin, so it doesn't count towards our commander. Not necessarily a good include because of that. And then the tokens land, triggering the Marauder. And with that we see a Haste and Cost Deductor, Goblin Warchief, and a Hazoret's Monument as well. Exiling the top card again with Oracle. I dare say he's just going for a Blasphemous Act. And again, but missing there as well, we see Goblin Chieftain for Haste. And third time in a row it is Phyrexian Altar as a sack outlet and means of making mana. Again, and this time it's a land. Alright, and I've just been kicked out into the lobby again straight away here. Yeah, if our opponent was going for Blasphemous Act, I think that's the only board wipe that could have got him out of this. He would have had to sacrifice more goblins in order to do it, and therefore couldn't afford the Blasphemous Act anyway, so I'm assuming that's why he scooped it up. But yeah, those big 2-mana creatures really did some work in the end there. It took us a while to be able to swing in with our commander, but once we start hitting, it's just a matter of time before we win the game, and it's exactly what happened here. So hopefully you all enjoyed this visit to the Ancient One. Huge thank you to the patrons for their support of the channel monetarily. Link to Patreon is in the description below if you want to follow their lead. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.